Hello, this is Watch All About, and in this watch review we're looking at the latest offering by Melbourne Watch Co. Obviously, I've been a big fan of Melbourne Watch Co. ever since their very first model, the Flinders, came out, and since then I've pretty much reviewed every single one of their models going. So it's nice to see this latest watch, the Sorrento. With this, I think Melbourne have really taken it up a notch. Um, Albeit the price has dramatically increased from their other offerings, um, the quality of this timepiece is quite exceptional to match. So the price then, it is quite expensive at 949 Australian dollars, which equates to around £588. Now, obviously, for that kind of money, you can get Swiss-made timepieces from long-established brands. But let's have a look into it in closer detail to see if it is worth the money. Size-wise, it's certainly an impressive looking and feeling watch. So we do have a fairly regular diameter of 42 millimeters. So that's good, but we do have quite a decent height of 14 mil, and our lug-to-lug length of 50 mil. In addition to this, because of mainly because of the steel bracelet, we have a pretty hefty weight of 198 grams. That's how it is right now, and I've taken about 4 or 5 links out. So obviously, if you have a larger wrist than I do, I've got 7¼ inch wrist, then it will be heavier because more links will be in the bracelet. So first off, it does look mightily impressive, decent size, decent weight to match as well. So it really does give a decent impression when you're wearing it. Other specs then, 200 meters water resistance, so perfectly suitable for diving, very reliable underwater as well with that kind of water resistance, which is good. The movement, one we've seen many times in microbands now, the Miyota 9015, which has proved to be extremely reliable. Obviously a high beat movement, so it ticks at 8 ticks a second. You can see there we have a very nice smooth sweeping seconds hand. Has a roughly 42 hours power reserve, hand winding capabilities, hacking seconds, etc. All of the usual specs. I have measured the accuracy of this movement in particular, and this is running about 12 seconds a day out. Now that might sound quite a lot, but when you think about COSC specs as 5 seconds a day out, then I usually say anything between 10 to 20 seconds a day out for a non-COSC spec watch is fairly average, and that's as to be expected. So our movement is running just fine. We have a 2-year warranty, so that's good. So if anything does happen, then you have a couple of years respite. So that's a good thing to have. And then to match our fairly large diameter of our watch, we have a lug width of 22 mil, which ever so slightly tapers down. You can see it tapers just here. That goes down to 20 mil at the buckle. Okay, so let's think about the watch aspect by aspect. So starting off with the dial. So as you can see, we have quite a variety of layers, a variety of finishes as well, which really does make viewing the dial very pleasurable. So the main thing to be aware of first off is we have this like lined wavy kind of background in the main center. The print work on it, so the logo and the Sorrento is flat, so it's on its own little platform, so the printing is always going to be accurate, which is good. We then have this highly polished outside ring, which is very nice, and then surrounding that we have another ring sitting on top of that. In addition to this, we then have our hour markers, which are applied, and then in particular these ones at 3, 6, and 9. They are on the same well, slightly higher than the secondary ring, and they come out and join into the bottom base plate. So you can see that there. So that's some nice bit of finishing there. You know, it's quite complex in construction, but it's very nicely designed, very nicely put together as well. And then we have our simple minute track around the outside. So, you know, it's nothing too complicated about it. So it does what it does really well. You can tell that it's a smart looking diver's watch because it's classy, but it's also extremely functional. You can tell as well by the size of the hands. Well, I mean, they're pretty fat, really. You don't usually see hands quite this thick, but they look great. I think the design is really cool. But they are also very functional because the amount of lume on them, the legibility they provide is very, very good. The second hand, we have a lumed block nearly at the end, and then what we always see on Melbourne watches, we have their Melbourne M as the counterweight on the second hand, so that's good to see carrying through on this watch as well. Okay, so moving on to the case. First things first, the bezel we come across has a very nice texturized wave pattern on the bezel insert, all loomed filled as well, so these are just drilled out and lume filled underneath it. The lume itself on the entire watch is fairly good. It's not mind-blowing like a Seiko, but you know, it's above average for micro brands, because usually micro brands aren't the best lume. But on this Sorrento, you can tell they have stepped it up a notch. The only one thing that isn't perfect on this watch is the pip at 12. You can see ever so slightly misaligned, which is a shame. But I'm fairly convinced with the history of Melbourne watches that I have received, this is an extremely rare case and one-off. So I would hazard a guess that this is definitely not the norm, and this is quite a unique occurrence that's ever so slightly misaligned. And in fact, I'm pretty sure that Sujane, the owner, will be really miffed that he sent me this one with the slightly misaligned pip. But there we go. So the bezel, very nice teething grip around the outside. The feeling of the bezel is lovely. The sound is very nice, very decent clicks as you rotate it around. So you can tell that has a very decent mechanism in the background working away. So that's a very nice, impressive point. Nice, high, decent bezel. So the remaining of our case is primarily brushed. So you have brushed sides, brushed lugs as well. Our crown is again quite traditionally Melbourne with their M logo embossed on the end there. Our crown guards are fairly unassuming and fairly simple. So on the case back we have a very nice deep stamped steel like headpiece of some scuba diving equipment. So that's a very nice touch. Again, the case back is very well designed, well put together. You know, it looks very impressive. It's held in place by these 4 screws either side, so rather than screw in. But when you're just looking at it, it just looks pretty good. It looks very impressive. Moving on to the bracelet, then we have a polished center link, brushed sides, and then the very edges are also polished. And then on the underside, it's all brushed as well, so that's very nice and comfortable on the wrist. Interestingly, which I've never seen before, we actually have quick release pins on the buckle, on the bracelet. Sorry, so you usually see these all the time in on leather straps, and I've not actually seen them before on a buckle. So this is quite nice to see. So you can easily remove this bracelet and replace it with a leather strap, and I'm sure this watch would look pretty badass on a decent, thick, high quality leather strap as well. So that's a nice little bonus. The lugs themselves, very nicely machined, as you'd expect. Really, the finishing is perfect as well. I do like the way it, the central polish band goes all the way up and meets with the polished bezel as well. So that's a nice touch. It flows through nicely, almost like a liquid metal. The gap, there is no gap in between the case and the buckle as well. Usually if you see a tiny bit of wiggle there, and there. You can put that down to slightly poor machining, whereas this, it matches absolutely perfectly, so very high accuracy there. Our standard deployment buckle, we have the polished top flap with the Melbourne logo reasonably deeply engraved on top. You flap that open, we have two pushers which are polished, and then the rest, the main buckle itself is brushed. You can just open it up and see the pip there. The rest is sort of like this blasted kind of finish, mainly most likely to help it to be quite hard wearing. Okay, so that's it at a glance. Let's have a look at it in much closer detail with the macro lens. So starting off with the dial, give it a quick wipe. So there's the logo. You can see print work is very fine and nice on that, and then we can see this ridged or bumped main aspect of the dial, very nicely finished there, you know, pretty much flawless really. So surrounding this we then have this polished outer ring with our applied hour markers on it. There's an example of the 3, 6 and 9 hour markers which come out of that secondary ring and join up with the base as well. So that's a very nice little touch. There's the other example. There you go. And then we have this extra ring around the outside as another higher level at with the minute track around it. Looking at the hands then, start with the seconds hand, we can see the M spinning around with our loomed block near the end. And then our main hands, nice design, a little bit unusual shape, which is good to see. It's nice to see something a bit different out there. And this is a mixture of brushed and polished as well, which you don't actually get to see and realise at a glance. So it's good to see these things with a macro lens, so we can see a polished stripe down the middle and brushed edges. Moving on to the case then, let's have a look at this bezel insert. You can see there, very nice ridged, wavy, texturized insert. Here's that loom pip, which is slightly misaligned, which is a shame. Moving on to the sides, there we go, you can see the fully polished grip. Again, pretty flawlessly machined. That provides you with decent grip to use the bezel. Moving on to our case in general. Nice crisp lines on the corners. Our brushed finish for the side as well. Looking pretty good. Moving on to this side, we can see our crown there, the Melbourne logo, and our crown guards as well. So let's just have a look at the case back then. So here's the deep stamped piece of scuba gear. Nice and impressively done. These details around the outside are extremely nice and accurate and deeply engraved as well, which is always good to see. Then we have a very cheeky polished rim around the outside of that case back with our 4 screws. And there's the underside of one of the lugs. So moving on to our buckle then, we'll just give one of these a quick wipe. I mean, obviously the polished central link is a sucker for fingerprints and hairline scratches, etc. So here's an example of central link. We have our brushed side links as well. See there the gap between the lugs and the bracelet itself is really tight. Looking at the underside, fully brushed underside. There we go. And then we have our little quick release pins as well. And then finally the buckle. So there's the M logo engraved on the polished top bar. And we have our polished pushers and our brushed main section. Open it up, we have our little cheeky little pip underneath and our blasted effect arm. Okay. So, the watch in itself is a beautiful watch. I think it's really well designed. The construction of it is quite exceptional. In fact, it's so good I would say that if you had a Swiss-made wording at the base of the dial, it could definitely pass off as a high-end timepiece. You know, £1,000 easily if you had a Swiss movement in it, like a ETA or a Solita. However, it's not, unfortunately, and it has a Miyota 9015 movement in. Part of me is just thinking it's just a tiny bit too expensive. You know, if it was just £100 or £200 cheaper, then it would be an exceptional micro brand. But it's just a little bit too expensive for a micro brand with a Miyota movement in, I think. So obviously that doesn't stop it being a exceptional timepiece. I've always liked Melbourne and their construction and their design work, and this is no different really. As I mentioned before, the construction is on another level to every single one of their timepieces, so you can tell the quality is there, which, you know, it's understandable why it is more expensive. However, it's just a little bit too expensive, I think, for a micro brand, unfortunately, and that's just my opinion. The whole watch perfect apart from that one misaligned pip, and I'm fairly convinced that any other watch won't have that. So that is literally my only concern to say about it. Very nicely designed, very impressive to wear, impressive looks as well. Excellent watch. So this was the Melbourne Watch Co. Sorrento, and that's what it's all about.